Hey guys, what's going on? So I am here out on the trail, and actually it's in a little bit of a warm spell, so some of the snow that fell in the last couple of weeks has starting to melt away. I'm sure it'll all come back very soon, but it leaves me for a pretty cool break to check out this bike, which is the BPM Imports F-15rz. It's a pretty cool, very approachable, adaptable bike that can fit into a few different kind of purposes. That's one reason why I came out here on the trail. So let's go ahead and check out the specifications before we go for a ride. So the F-15rz is a bike that is a folding fat tire electric bike. Of course it's electric, that's our thing here at Electric Bike Review, but the fat tire part is definitely a good focus of it. So this is a 20-inch by 4-inch wide tire, kind of like one of the standards for a fat tire folding bike. And yeah, these are pretty good tires as well. The Kenda Crusade Sport. So these ones are pretty cool because they offer a little bit of cushion, so they're nice and soft, but they also can get into some loose terrain, and you're actually going to see that soon enough when we get on the ride, because we're going to go out in some of the snow, of course the leaves, the grass, the dirt, the gravel, and a little bit of pavement just to round out everything. But these are a pretty cool tire because they do offer that cushion as well as the traction to get into a lot of spaces with the tread here on there. Fairly aggressive tread, so if you ride this on the road every single day, these nice little soft spots will wear out. So if you plan on getting this for exclusively road terrain, which you totally could, you'll probably be looking at a new set of tires faster than if you go out on some soft terrain such as off-road that we're going to do today. So yeah, these are the wheels. These are a pretty cool white double-walled rim, which is pretty neat. Goes into the spokes, and of course the hub spacing up in the front is 135 millimeters, and that's of course to accommodate the large width of the tire. So here you have the 160 mechanical disc brakes. These brakes are all right. I would say that you're probably going to have to babysit these if you intend on going really far, or sorry, if you intend on going really fast, because the total weight of the entire bike is 68.5 pounds, as you see it here. That's with the big battery, of course, the big motor, wheels, and everything else. So this is a heavy bicycle, and on top of that, if you're going to be going fast, which this bike is capable of going fast, you'll want to babysit those brakes a lot, because if you take some really fast stops on these mechanical disc brakes, then they're going to wear out a little bit quicker. So when you get this bike and you have it assembled, I definitely have the brakes checked over by a second set of eyes, perhaps a professional bike shop, if that's who you'd like to assemble your bike, because these mechanical disc brakes are going to need a little babysitting. They'll be fine, but you just got to upkeep them a little bit more, because this is you know, a smaller set of brakes, a 160 rather than a 180, and mechanical instead of hydraulic, and this is a pretty heavy bike. So I would say that's one of the parts of the bike that you'll definitely want to have looked over. But another feature about the bike that I really like is the suspension here. So this is a pretty wide suspension, and it goes over the entirety of this wide rim and, you know, wide tire as well. It does have a lockout and a preload adjustment up here on the crown of the fork, and also some metal fenders. So I like metal fenders. I'm not much of a weight weenie, you can tell. Not much of a weight weenie, so the metal fenders are fine by me, and I like that they stay here. You know, the plastic ones are nice. They are light. They're easier to flip around, but in this case I like the metal ones because they stay put. I like that a lot. And that actually comes in here into the front bracket for the headlight, and we'll kind of address that in a little bit when we get into the electric system. All right, so coming up to the stem, as per usual from a folding bike, it does have this latch up here that allows the stem to collapse. It's a lot easier with two hands. I'll open that up, it's nice and snug. Here we go, and then the handlebars fold out of the way. So that's a pretty cool feature in itself, because you could put this into a closet or perhaps under a tall table or a workbench. Let's see, let's go ahead and put that up here. We'll lock it into position. Also got the telescoping stem to raise up the handlebars a little bit. In my experience, I usually just put these all the way down and leave them that way. And especially with the throttle and the motor system that you're using, that's my preferred method of carting around on this guy. So the handlebars on here aren't terribly wide. They're actually 570 millimeters wide, and that's to accommodate for the folding aspect. So it still has a fairly small profile when you fold the bike up. The handlebars, of course, are flat. Not a whole lot of padded accessories here. The grips are pretty standard grips. These are the brake handles for the ZStar brakes, both front and rear. They do have a motor inhibitor in here, which is pretty nice. That actually cuts off the electric signal to the motor, so you're never fighting against the brakes a very necessary feature when you're on this big heavy bike. So yeah, I definitely appreciate that part right there. So coming on down to the frame, it does have this swoop to it, which is pretty cool because it makes the bike much more approachable. So someone who has trouble getting their leg up there, or if they're just wearing something big and poofy, they can swoop their leg up and in there. That's probably about, I'd say, somewhere around 16 inches off of the ground to get your foot up and over there. So not too much more over, say, a futon or something like that. Is probably even higher than that. It does have this little handle if you want to cart the bike around, kind of pick it up by that spot. And of course the seat post tube, nothing too amazing there. The seat post itself is actually a 28x6. So if you did want to switch this out for a different seat post that had like a suspension on there, you could totally do that and kind of soften it up a little bit. By and large, it is a fairly comfortable bike, mostly because of the tires and the seating position. But if you wanted to get a little extra, you could put a different seat post right in here to add some suspension. Of course, that would increase the height of the minimum saddle. But then again, this saddle is pretty wide. You can see that it has the springs up in here for added comfort. It is like a vinyl covered gel that I'd say is about 7 inches wide on the footprint there. Not too much of a horn, so definitely made for more sitting and relaxing, not so much for endurance pedaling for a long distance. So, okay, and then we got the battery mount right behind the seat post there. We'll kind of talk about the battery in a little bit. Up front, you do have the front chain ring, and these are actually a 170 millimeter crank up here with some folding pedals. These are kind of standard for folding bikes. You pull in on that little latch and then boom, there you go, and you save yourself a little bit of space. On this particular one, the folding mechanism is a little bit recessed into the core of the pedal. So instead of folding on, say, this axis right here, it actually folds on that axis there. So this particular pedal does save you a little more space. I mean, every inch can help. So I kind of like that part about it. That, and I like the latch. You know, there's a lot of other ones where you push in on the whole pedal and rotate, and it's definitely convenient. But I don't know, maybe it's just that tactile feel that I like the latch, you know, kind of like a mechanical keyboard sort of thing. So yeah, you got that there. On the front, you do have a 52 tooth chain ring, and you do have a guard on both sides, which is kind of nice. You get a fair amount of torque out of there. And that comes back into the 16x32 tooth freewheel right here in the back from Shimano. That is using a Shimano Tourney system, and Shimano Tourney is not really the highest on the totem pole, but it does get the job done. And like I kind of mentioned before, in a bike like this, personally, I'm going to be using a lot of the throttle on it. The pedaling is definitely a nice thing to do when you want to get some exercise in it, but by and large, personally, I'm going to use the throttle on there. So we do have a rack that's welded onto the rear triangle here. Now, it's a pretty good rack, although it does have some strong tubing, some fairly thick tubing right here, and that will not accommodate every single pannier bag. So when you're shopping around for a pannier bag, some of them have a really tiny hook, which is kind of like the standard, especially for European racks. But you'll want something that could either be expanded fairly easy or something that's already expanded so it can fit over this large tubing. So be aware of that. Of course, this is the little rear reflector that came on the bike, fender, and of course in the back we have a mirrored set of brakes and wheels. The spokes are actually a little bit thicker. I think these are 12 gauge spoke on the rear, and that's to handle the extra torque that's coming from the motor. And yeah, I'm super excited. So I think that covers it for about the mechanical system. One last little point that's kind of a extra brownie point here at EBR is the kickstand. So the kickstand is actually recessed back here onto the left chainstay here, and it has a 40 millimeter provision between these two bolts. And why that's important is because you can actually, you know, rotate the cranks backwards and it won't come into contact with the pedal. It's not really a big thing, but if you're pushing this backwards in a garage, it might lock up and kind of give you a little jolt. But that's not really a thing because we got the kickstand mounted in the rear. So pretty fun stuff. All right. You can tell I've been holding my tongue on talking about the electric system, so here we go. This bike is using a 1,000 watt Bafang rear hub motor and a 48 volt 21 amp hour Samsung battery pack. That already is a pretty cool thing about the bike. And that's kind of like the highlight, in my opinion. That's kind of like the highlight of this bike, because this sort of platform, you know, we've seen bikes that are, you know, one way or the other on this sort of platform. But in this one, you get a really powerful motor. You get a battery that can certainly haul that for a long distance, as well as you get a lot of the weight down low with the folding aspect. So it's definitely a fun bike to ride around on. So yeah, this again is the motor, that 1,000 watt Bafang motor, and it's kind of a beast. It does, you know, as I said earlier, kind of weigh down the bike, and it puts a lot of the weight on the rear. of the bike, but you know what, when you have the total weight kind of low, it's not so much of a thing. There are some other bikes that have a heavy motor and they also have a battery that's kind of hanging high that can kind of disrupt the weight balance a little bit. But in this case, the battery weight is a little more centered but also lower, and that really helps out quite a bit. One thing about the battery pack, this is a pretty honking battery pack. Like I said, the 48 volt 21 amp hour, and that's pretty darn big, but it's using what's called the Silverfish case, and I like this case. You know, I got a personal bike that has this case and it's fine, but you don't have a latch to remove the seat out of the way. So if you want to get the battery out, you actually have to remove the seat. It's not really a big deal because you have a quick release right here. Open up this little guy, boom, seat comes out of the way. And then to get the battery itself out, you turn that key and then pull up on the latch, and then boom, there you got the battery itself. It's heavy because it's holding quite a bit. I mean, that's 1 kilowatt, really 1008 watt hours to be exact, so barely over a kilowatt of energy inside of this battery pack. Whew, I think I need another hand. Get it right in there. So it slides in pretty well. You can see that there are contours that are built into the case to go around the seat post tube there, and it does lock into position. There's a little tiny pin that comes out when you rotate that specific key. And by the way, this key is necessary to stay into the bike to turn it for ignition. And now the bike is capable of being turned on, but the key doesn't come out. It's kind of wedged in there now that you have it turned on. Turn it off and you know you're ready to go, and still lock it into position onto the rack, or you can turn the whole thing all the way around and of course get the key and the battery out at the same time. So let's go ahead and put the seat back into position. One other thing I can mention on the seat is that this bike did come with a rear light, but it's like an aftermarket rear light that runs on AA batteries. So, you know, it's not my favorite for an integrated light, but I'm glad that they kind of covered that base. You know, albeit slightly, they did cover the base. So this little light, let's see, I don't know if it'll really show you a whole lot, but it has a few different modes for it, which is kind of nice. It doesn't just turn on and off like a very base light. It has a couple of different cycling features to it, which is kind of neat. And of course that comes on a little mount that you could put on the seat post like I did. I think that's the intent, but if you wanted to, you could even get it around the tubing here or maybe on your backpack. I don't know, that's up to you. So this bike is using a cadence based pedal assist system, and that's actually built in right down here into this little magnet right here, this little disc of magnets. So it's actually using an 8 magnet sensor. Right there you can see, maybe I'll get to the other side so it's a little bit better of a perspective there. All right, so right there is a little magnet disc, and that rotates with the pedals to kind of give you the pedal assist sensation. And we'll go up here to the display, and let's see, the bike is almost on. There we go. And we'll turn on the display. It'll show us a couple of things. On the left, it'll show you the pedal assist, and it actually, I think, defaults to whatever you had it set for last. So that means if you crank it up all the way to 5, turn the bike on and off again, still might be in level 5, which I kind of like. Up on the top, you have a variable part for a timer, average speed, max speed, distance, and of course the odometer. Pressing the up or down arrows, of course, is how you control pedal assist. And if you want to turn on that front light, which by the way is integrated, it doesn't run off its own, it runs off the main battery pack, you press and hold the up arrow and you hold it for a little while, you'll see that tiny little indicator come up, and then that's what turns on the front light right here. So that one is integrated, nice choice there, but the rear one is running off its own battery pack. And speaking of energy, this is a little, I guess, like dongle that kind of comes out of the display into like a little node here. This is actually a USB charge port. So if you got a phone or a banana or something else that you wanted to charge up, you could plug that right in here, and it just kind of hangs. So if you had a phone mount, you could put your phone here and let that cord kind of hang out and then do to this one. If you wanted to, you could like strap it on to, say, the handlebars, or maybe even on here onto the wire loom or something like that. But that's kind of a neat little thing to have that attached on there. If for some reason you wanted to clean up your handlebars, you could just hack it and never have it again if you so desire. But one other thing to talk about is the throttle. So the throttle is not entirely tied to the pedal assist. The throttle can actually go faster than the pedal assist can. I was able to get the pedal assist up to about 20, and the throttle got me up to much higher than that. About 26 or so was what I reached when I was on my way here. But this is pretty neat. I like the thumb throttle, and we're definitely going to be using that while we're out on the bike. And another thing is that there's this little button. right here underneath the throttle. So I've actually seen this button do a few different things. I've seen it be a forward or reverse. I've seen it be a headlight button. I've actually seen it turn the throttle on or off. But in this case, it is a little electric horn. So kind of neat. And that's kind of a fun little feature to have when you are biking on a trail that's so pleasant and so serene like this, as you come up beside someone with this really powerful bike and then you blast them with this horn, and it's I'm just teasing, that'd be kind of rude. But I think that covers everything for the mechanical system and the electric system. My favorite part, as you know, is when we get to go on the bike and take it for a ride, and we're actually going to do that right now. We're going to get on the bike and we're going to go yonder onto this trail. We're going to see some ice, we're going to see some grass, some gravel, some snow, of course, and also a little bit of pavement, and it's going to be a blast. So let's go. All right, guys, so here we go on the F-15rz. Right now I'm just in the first level of pedal assist, going about, I don't know, 7 or 8 miles an hour or so. Nothing too crazy from here on out, because we got the ice coming up. Those wide tires really do well in the ice and the snow. It's kind of slushy because it's halfway melted and kind of mixing in with the mud. So I'm definitely appreciating those fenders, because of all days I wore my light colored pants today. So maybe at the end of the video we'll measure how much gunk is on my pants, and we'll see how good the fenders are. But yeah, the bike controls fairly well for this kind of riding. Again, we're going a little bit slow, not really showing what the motor can do on pedal assist. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll crank this guy up to level 5. Ooh, let that through. Yeah, it has some guts to it. I want to try this out on the pavement when I have a little more of a runway, because right now it just chews into everything. I kind of want to stay in the snow. That 1,000 watt motor really kicks in fast when you got it cranked up and you hit the throttle. Like it really jolts you. So, and we're here in some, I mean, this is some of the loosest terrain you can get. Some old leaves and mud and branches and snow. So you can they're kind of spinning out. You can tell I'm having a lot of fun. I'm definitely taking the opportunity to use this bike and its fat tire and 1,000 watt motor capabilities to spin around in some new areas that I've never been before. You know, this is what they advertise, you know, when they say, oh, our bike can go anywhere and do anything and stuff like that. A lot of times people don't do those things, but it's capable, you know. I'm gonna have to fix up this bike a little bit, probably the brakes, clean it up and everything. You know, it's not something that you would just do and forget about, because you don't want your bike to go to fall into disrepair. But you could do it. You could totally do it. And I think this motor is a little I think I could take the pedal assist down a little bit, because this motor certainly has a lot of guts to do it. Oh, that's fun. So the fenders, maybe I'll point you down a little bit and you can see the fenders kind of in action, because they're not 100%. I mean, no fender can be, but I've been riding through the snow and the slush very intently, trying to make a big mess, and you can see that it does. Let's go ahead and power through here and you'll see it in real time. So I'll get back onto the ice a little bit, tiny bit more. So yeah, it's not 100% coverage on those fenders, but I don't know if you intend on going through the kind of terrain that we just went through. So it did get me a little bit wet, but not too much. It only came up to about here or so, and even then it was just kind of spraying. It wasn't like a constant, you know, waterfall or anything like that. But yeah, I think that's pretty good for what you're getting on those fenders, because they're not, you know, entirely inclusive around the whole wheel. I mean, that's kind of a fantasy there, but pretty good for what you're getting. So if you're a little bit bigger, you might appreciate that motor that might come in handy all the time. But in my case, at, you know, somewhere around 200 pounds, the motor is not a huge need for me in this kind of terrain and this kind of trail. I'm not going up huge hills. I'd probably be fine just having the pedal assist down to like maybe 3 or 4 or so, I don't know. But there are some dirt biking trails actually behind me. Let's see if I can go to those dirt biking trails. They're probably wet also. All right, let's try this again. I actually tried it once and biffed because I took the turn a little bit too tight on the loose terrain. We'll do it again. Here we go. Oh, take it easy. Oh man, it does it. I mean, ooh boy, that was fun. That was fun. Boom, there you go. The BPM Imports F-15rz. Not so bad. I mean, for a step through folding electric fat tire bike, we've been able to do things that I wouldn't do on a lot of other bikes. And I think a lot of that has to do with the power, that 1000 watts that you're getting out of the motor. The weight is slung low, and you got all of that at the ready on the throttle. So yeah, as a commuter bike, it'd probably be a lot of fun to do that too as well, because you could carry some pretty heavy loads with that if you wanted to, if you had a trailer on there. But I think that an application like what we did today really kind of shows what this bike is capable of. All right, guys, here we go on the BPM Imports F-15rz. 1000 watts, baby. I'm pretty excited to get this Bafang 1000 watt motor going. Of course, we got down here the battery pack and also the cranks. Got it all the way up to level 5 pedal assist, and let's go and see what it does. This guy got up to speed instantly. I probably got like 20 yards down the way, and then it already started to cap out on the speed. So fun stuff. All right, guys, thanks for checking out the review of the BPM Imports F-15rz. I don't want to bore you with telling you how much fun it was, because you got to see. So yeah, if you want to check out the full written review with all the pros, cons, the measurements and specifications for this bike, go to ElectricBikeReview.com. While you're there, you can also compare this to another BPM import bike that we got to review about a month ago or so. As well, you can check out all sorts of bikes from across the industry. So thanks for watching, guys, and ride safe.